When I was 5, I was a very, very lucky boy because my mom took me to my grandmother's house where there was a television, because where I grew up there was no TV, there was only nature. And one evening there was this movie. She had to kind of entertain me because I was a very active young 5-year-old. And she thought the title of the movie called A Space Odyssey. And she thought that might be great family entertainment. And I'm happy she did, because of this fantastic movie, I wanted to become a designer and an architect. I wanted to become creative. I wanted to tell stories. I dreamed about going to the International Space Station to check in at the Hilton Galactica Hotel and have candid conversations with fellow intellectuals. It would be like, wow, this would be great. And obviously, much later in my life, I found out that maybe the foreseeable future of 2001 would not actually really be on the space station at the Hilton Galactica. But even before that, in 1997, I actually did my first space design, which was a nightclub, as you can see here, a very, very white nightclub. And I mean, I would say it's my first commercial project at age 23. And I also owned the project. And you can probably imagine, red drinks like strawberry margaritas or blue balls and stuff like that on a white resin floor is not really the ideal situation. So understanding how to operate a nightclub, you learn a lot. It's the worst experience you can have. But on the other hand, I owned it, so it was my responsibility to take the cost of redoing the floors constantly. So the coloring in the drinks we took out after 2 weeks of operation, and it became much better. But also, mind you, the whole idea about creating a space, the whole idea about understanding storytelling is a very, very important thing about our lives. And Stanley Kubrick did that in perfection. And that's why I was like, wow, if I can tell that story in the same way, in a smaller scale, for people on a day-to-day basis, it would be an amazing experience. And obviously, we did this. You can see where the inspiration comes from. So it's not a secret. But we might went a little bit too far on the name as well, because we actually called it NASA. If you know what NASA is, you probably see there is some conflicts here. And the people in Houston also recognized that, because they sent us a fax. You know what a fax is, right? Good. It kind of says the age group here. It's nice. A fax saying you're doing copyright infringement after 1 year of opening the place. And I was like, holy shit, what do we do? So we actually made a fax and sent back to them and saying it's a complete misunderstanding. We don't mean to do anything harm to your name. It's actually an acronym of nice and safe attitude, which was well received in Houston. So that was very lucky for us. But you can see here, it's about the storytelling. It's about creating a space for people to come into and be in a third place. And when I look at how the world is moving right now, from doing architecture and design in different scales as well, there is an everlasting mass dream. And I would say almost every star architect, maybe not Timo, but many of the other star architects has this vision about we're going to Mars and we're going to inhabit it and we're going to do great stuff. And you see many, many photos of fantastic projects that are really futuristic, and you think, well, I could live there. That would be nice. I mean, there is a little bit of a problem with the lack of atmosphere outside, and maybe also lack of water. And then there is also in this new inhabited project from NASA that actually won the first prize on how to 3D print houses, which is really interesting. There's also the idea about the transportation, because nowadays NASA is more an administration unit for billionaires like Elon Musk, for instance, who made the Falcon Heavy rocket on your right, which is a very, 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 very big rocket. I mean, I must admit, I've actually I'm working a lot with NASA. Our company is, and I am very often doing speeches at NASA to inspire them. So I was there to see a launch of that, and that was absolutely magnificent. But what is more magnificent is that rocket next to, which is NASA's Space Launch System, which is the biggest rocket ever made. And there is a little bit about super rich people who has enough cash to make big phalluses and make them fly into space. There's just something about that. But also, mind you, at the Falcon Heavy top unit, which is a transportation where you can put goods in, is probably room for 1.5 Tesla, right? To send to space, because that's really important. And in the SLS system, there is room for 2.5 Teslas. And you think about taking all that stuff to Mars, which, by the way, at this point of time is 266 million miles away, which is, a couple of times around the globe, to be quite frankly. If you wait many, many years, it will be down to 66 million miles away, but it's not within the foreseeable future that we're going to do this. So I have the feeling, and that's also why when we do design and architecture, we really want to look into what we can do and make an on-Earth experience. And I'm going to show you a little bit of different things here, because this here is a project in Iceland. On Iceland, sorry. Iceland used to be Danish, and I'm Danish, so I still feel like it's our island, but actually it isn't anymore, so we have to say in Iceland. We made this project for a client, which had a dream and idea about actually creating something that would be a place where you can go, of course, on a full-time basis with an art project as well, artist residencies, art gallery, but also a hotel and a spa, because, if you dig down, the ground is the most amazing water coming up. And it actually is kind of self-sufficient when it comes to energy and to environmental benefits, because Iceland is very much based on the heat from below. And that's why you can actually heat up a place like this. Mind you, it is also from the local airport, 3.5 hours drive on a sunny day, mind you, to go there. And on a snowy day, it might be impossible. So in many ways, it's a little bit like going to Mars. I mean, it's not that easy, apart from the $1,000 per night, possibly minimum, to live there. But what is interesting about doing a project like this is that, of course, you can make a great piece of architecture. That's what we want to do. But it's also about how to see how can you tell that story, and why do we need these experiences? And I believe we need the experience because we are basically lost. If I take myself as an example, I am lost. I'm lost here as well today. I was up like at 4 in the morning to get here, and I have to be on a train at 5 in the morning next morning to go to Paris and so on. And we all have busy lives. And many of you are architects and designers and futurists and urbanists, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. There's a lot of demands, and we put a lot on our shoulders as well. So I am basically very often tired and I'm lost. But the good thing is I know how it feels in my stomach now when I feel that. I need to get away, because I'm lost. So when looking into researching for this project, we looked into the history of Iceland, and we found an amazing Icelandic tale about a half man, half human, actually half troll, half human, sorry, big difference, who wanted to escape the people because he didn't trust them anymore, and he moved into the nearby glacier of Snæfellsnes. Can you say that? Snæfellsnes? That's immigration policy in Iceland. You can actually move there if you can say it perfectly. But he moved into this glacier, and in this tale, he went through different circles of life. And the first thing was actually being lost. The next thing was being contemplative, being exposed, confronted, having clarity, and in the end, being enlightened and coming out back to the normal life out of the glacier. And in many ways, I feel the same when I go away, because I really do doubt where I am in my life, and I need to go away. And I think this is the wish we also have to go to Mars. What if we are on Mars? We can live there. We can be completely gone from everything. But in reality, what we really want to do is to just have a great time on this planet. So we should really make experiences here that will give you that, and we use storytelling around it. So, of course, we did that in an architecture. For instance, calling the steam room of the spa Lost, because it's fucky, you come in there. The clay room being contemplative, because you will lie there in the clay. Maybe not this clean, let's be honest about it. It's kind of dirty if you've ever tried a spa with a mud bath. The saunas, which there is 5 of in this resort, have the same kind of exposed feel, and so on and so on. So trying to apply the idea and the storytelling on all elements of the hotel, from the spa to the restaurant menu to the cocktails to the nature and the art around the place as well. And if you can imagine the 3 days a year where you can have a tan in Iceland, this might be one of them. But the whole idea about storytelling in the design is something that we find incredibly interesting. And I'm just going to show you a bit of a slideshow in the background. Because everything we do as architects and designers has to rely on that we give something from us to others. If we don't share our ideas, if we don't share our visions, we don't really give the full purpose of our lives. And that is something I found extremely important in the work that we do as architects and designers. I mean, if Mars looks like this, I don't think it does. I'd rather want to go to Iceland, to be honest, because you have the Northern Lights, fantastic. And that takes me to how you can tell the stories as well, how you can share. And sometimes you can go very personal. And the furniture industry is in particular an industry that doesn't go very personal, to be honest. I mean, most stories about a chair is like, well, it has velvet on it, you can sit on the comfort, foam is this density, and so on and so on. Which to me is frankly not very interesting, because that's something, that's a commodity. What I find interesting is that I've done an experiment last year, and I talked to my teams in Copenhagen about it, and I said, you know, we have this furniture collection, and I want to tell the true story behind it. And they were like, oh my God, that's dangerous, because you might have people's opinions. People might think something about what you do, so that is dangerous. And I'm like, what do I have to lose? I mean, what do you have to lose by telling something honest? So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my private life, right? So a couple of years ago, I was 44. I met this beautiful woman, and I thought, maybe now is finally time to put a ring on the finger. And so I started drawing rings, which I'm terrible at doing, to be quite honest. I'm not a jewel designer, and I will prove it on this sketch here, you can see. So you see up there, it says The Ring. That is where I started, and then all of a sudden it transformed into a chair, because I do chairs better than rings, to be quite honest. I went to a professional for the ring. Unfortunately, or at this point, fortunately, that ring got remelted into a small rose gold thing, because a year later I was drawing another piece of furniture, because I actually forgot about that one. I drew this one here, and that was when I was heartbroken, and I was like, feeling sorry for myself. I draw this half heart, which is completely naive, I agree to it, but at the same time, it's terrible. Oh, this could be a great sofa, I thought. So, you know, nothing is as bad as it cannot become a great sofa. That's really the idea about it. And you might think this is a very personal thing to share, and it really is. But on the other hand, what do I have to lose? Again, what do I have to lose? And I'm also a musician, and I will not, you know, we only have a limited time. Normally I would play one of my hit songs, and we'll all dance, and we'll applause and stuff like that. We can talk about that over drinks, but I have done over 600 songs, and I still do a lot of music. And I thought about, if you think about your favorite song, it is probably about heartbreak or love. Unless you like death metal, of course. It might be about something else, like, Rah! Could also be about love. I'm not really sure. I don't understand it. But if a musician can tell a story about love and heartbreak, why can't a furniture designer also? So that's what we did, and we did it with Moroso from Italy. And there's a sofa. You can see it. And in this, with their press people and all the communication agency from Milan say, allora, this is a very bold, people will think about it. It's like, yes, let people think. And right now we're doing something called the Heartbreaker Tour. And we come to Amsterdam soon. And basically that is me sitting in a sofa. Hopefully I have Robert to interview me, and we make some jokes. And then we have a lot of Prosecco afterwards. All right? Because that is really how you can celebrate love. And in that way, I find it encouraging to be able to tell stories about my life through furniture, which is very direct and very straight. You can actually hear this is the silver ring, and that's the gold ring below the chair. So that's the storytelling. But that also takes me to the importance of what we do as designers and architects. Is also to dig into what is the future. And now, you know, we've heard two really great speakers about, and I mean, I don't know if Timo is still here, but I mean, the power of that architecture is just mind-boggling to me. I just love it so much. And we are more humble in that sense. We are more Danish, and we saw a lot of Danish design before, but I'm not that Danish. You can see I'm pretty white, actually, meaning I'm half Irish. And the funny thing is, my mom is Danish-Swedish, and my brother's mom is German, and my sister's mom is French, and our father, he traveled the world with a guitar, non-stop, actually, and that's also why it comes together with a little bit of confusion. But the Danish style and architecture is something that is in us if we are from Denmark, in some sense. So when a Canadian bike brand came to us 2 years ago and said we would like to open our first European headquarter, we were like, fantastic, because, you know, in Holland, you have the most amazing bike lanes in the world. They're better than the Danish ones because we are not very generous with the size of them, but we do have approximately 500,000 people in Copenhagen biking every day, which is a lot. I mean, there's just bikes everywhere. Cars cannot be anywhere. And on top of that, we also have what I call the middle-aged men in Lycra. Don't put your hands up because it's embarrassing for you, but it's really like it's the new golf actually. It's like a middle-aged men, like myself honestly, putting on Lycra, going out, clunk, 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 going on a really expensive bike and going racing. And every weekend, and I'm not kidding you, 250,000 of them are on the Danish roads, which is really irritating if you're having a Sunday drive, for instance. But nevertheless, it's a golden age for making bicycles. So we put this into, we have to make a showroom and distribution center, but why not make it a retail store as well? So we looked at how can we change that scenery. And you can see this is the outdoor of the place. It's the middle of the countryside in Copenhagen. And the reason why it is, because there's lots of biking routes around it. And when you come inside, you can see actually that what we want to do here is to create the monastery of bicycling. Because for many people, the bicycle becomes almost like like a small god. So why not make it, elevated to the higher point? But also make a place that really plays with your senses. And I started my first company when I was 15 as a lighting designer. And for me, lighting and sound is really two important things as a musician as well. So you really have to play with all the senses with light, not only with, on and off, but also with the temperature of the light, because it is a mood-altering experience. And that's why I'm just going to show you a small snippet of a video so you can see how this room actually works. It is voice control, so you can say, bike number 5, down, it comes down, and the whole place transforms around you, and that is a very encouraging experience. So I'm just going to show you this little video. And what is interesting is this sells bicycles to 60% of the people walking in there. They said in the beginning maybe 10, but 60% buys a bike, and it is 5 to 25,000 euros for a bike, which is insane. But golf is also expensive, so whatever, leave it for that, right? But that actually brings me to what I've called the Unplug Life, because with all these different experiences and all the storytelling you do and what you do, it's also about what we actually want to do with our life. And I know this is basically about, about living and about residential. We have done some residential projects, mostly interior designs and for rich people, and I must say that might be the most irritating thing you can do in your life. So don't even go there. It's like, people turning the drawing on the head like, I don't like this. Well, maybe you should look at the right way, and so on and so on. So I'm much more into finding the small points where you can look into inspiration. And I will show you now something you have all seen because it looks really great. This is the Danish company called VIP, who actually happens to start their company by doing trash cans, and now they make cabins as well. And there's a fascination about these cabins because you want to get away because you're lost. So, let's go to the cabin in the weekend. But I mean, the cabin is expensive, and the cabin is nothing without the location, like this one as well. I mean, maybe you afford the cabin, but the experience of the location might be difficult. And I might put it in parallel, because when I grew up in a hippie camp in Denmark, I was living permanently in a cabin experience, in a great location, just to show you to compare the two things, right? And that is this one here, and that in the 70s was my home. That's if I dreamt about a home, that was it. It was like, wow, this is so great. Because when you're a child, when you're 5 years old, you dream about space and you dream about being in different places. you don't really think about the consequences. You don't think about life in that sense. You just enjoy where you are because it feels safe. And that's really where I come from. So it is to put this in perspective. And I can also show you maybe a small childhood picture. Sometimes it's good to remind that we are human beings as well. And by far, if you are against nudity, you should turn your head around now, because it is hippies, mind you, in the 70s. This one is a typical picture, and you can see here, around here, if there was any, in the agriculture business, this cow has been censored for good reasons. But this is basically me, red hair, red underwear, red socks, red wagon, and my little brother's buttocks over here covered. So when you grew up in a place like this, it's a question of, we understand. I say, thank you very much for having me.